Hello and welcome to the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and today we continue our NFC East and overall NFL fantasy football team preview series with the New York Football Giants. And look, starts at the top, year two, Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones coming on back. And in terms of fantasy football land, I mean, this rookie year went as well as it could have gone. I mean, only Lamar Jackson had more games with at least 30 fantasy points than Jones last season. Now, okay, Lamar had 7. Jones had 3. There's obviously a gap between those two, but I mean, he came out, he put up big productive performances and had shootouts with fellow bad teams. I mean, this was all we could have hoped for from Daniel Jones, who, like Josh Allen, was more or less written off, before he even played an NFL snap by most evaluators out there. And look, I need to improve my, just college scouting, just, having a better grasp on these guys entering the NFL. But, just seeing Jones and Josh Allen over these last 2 years, come in unanimously, kind of be like written off before they even take a snap. I really think just as a, fantasy football community as a whole, we could all do a little better at, giving these rookies, let them get actual NFL reps, preseason, regular season, before making too strong of opinions. I know how tempting it is when we have February through April every single year, to only focus on these rookies. But, just seeing these situations where, quarterbacks in college weren't in the right scheme or place or, or even just the reality that you can be a bad real life quarterback and still be a productive fantasy quarterback, be careful about writing off the next perceived first round bust. Looking at you, Jordan Love. So anyway, Danny Dimes was awesome in the preseason last year and ends up throwing for over 3,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, and just 12 interceptions. The issue was 18 fumbles and just 12 starts. Absolutely absurd. And additionally, I mean, Daniel Jones, he only started 12 games, but managed to join Jameis Winston, Kyle Allen, Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning, and Deshaun Kaiser as the only QBs to rack up at least 30 turnover-worthy plays in a season since 2017. He needs to rein things in. He can do it. I mean, Lamar Jackson had a fumbling problem his first year. Second year was able to cut that down. So I think it's certainly more solvable than the interceptions. But, the issue here, and, it was a good point by Evan Sobel when he came on my podcast to talk quarterbacks. I would be so much higher on Daniel Jones if we didn't have Jason Garrett now, in charge of this guy's development, seemingly, calling plays for the offense. I mean, as great as Tony Romo and Dak Prescott are, I'm not sure how much credit we can give Garrett for that. I mean, the common complaint of Cowboys offenses over the last 10 years was just how predictable they were and, lack of pre-snap motion, lack of moving around the talent. So I think, Saquon Barkley is going to be fine just getting the workload, but expecting Daniel Jones to make this big year 2 leap in an offense that will probably still have, anyone's idea of a below average offensive line, good weapons everywhere, still not a great defense. So he could still be a productive fantasy producer, but, was much higher on Jones before the whole Garrett situation. That is for sure. Moving on to that backfield. 2018's RB1, Saquon Barkley, lost the title in 2019 to Christian McCaffrey, but I mean, I think it's still pretty clear that Barkley is anyone's idea of a top 2 fantasy back in the league. I do have him as my RB2 at the moment, but man, I was saying on the old Twitter sphere last week, if we had, as in planet Earth, Space Jam type situation, aliens invade our planet, we need to field a football team to try to take it to them and save humanity, Saquon Barkley would be Earth's RB1. I am convinced of it. There just isn't a guy that, is more just slippery, powerful, the balance, it's ridiculous. I mean, again, 2018 PPR RB1 and league leader in broken tackles. I truly believe he is the single best RB in the league, just in terms of who would you want to have on the field, all money, that sort of stuff equal. So the question is, what is the pass game floor going to look like? I mean, over the past 2 years, only McCaffrey, James White, and Alvin Kamara have had more targets per game than Saquon Barkley. I mean, 6.7. Now, that's a little bit inflated from getting 121 targets in 2018, but hey, even the 73 pass game opportunities last year ranked 8th among all running backs, and Saquon missed 3 games to get there. So, maybe not getting 120 plus targets, but I think with Saquon's talent, with the projection for 80 plus targets and 300 plus rush attempts, should be good. And like I said, I'm worried about Jason Garrett's overall influence on this offense, particularly Daniel Jones' development. But as we've seen from Garrett, with your DeMarco Murrays and Ezekiel Elliott's of the world, he is perfectly willing to force feed a productive feature back like Saquon Barkley. Could Dion Lewis somehow take pass down snaps away from Barkley? I really, really, really hope not. But hey, I wouldn't quite put it past the Clapper. And also, just in terms of a handcuff situation, I think if Barkley goes down, we would see a 2 RB system between Dion Lewis and Wayne Gallman. I would not go on my way to target either in fantasy drafts, even in terms of late round darts. There's just better guys out there to go after. All right, wide receiver. So really difficult to project this Giants passing game because we did not have a single game all last season where all of Jones, Barkley, Darius Slayton, Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, Evan Engram were all healthy. We just didn't. Now, I went ahead and I took the targets per game from these guys just when Daniel Jones was under center. And again, little fluky because some of these games, guys were benefiting from others being out. But at the end of the day, Golden Tate led the way with 8.4 targets per game with Daniel Jones under center. Sterling Shepard was in there at 8.3. Then Evan Engram at 7.7. Darius Slayton 6.1. Saquon Barkley 5.7. So a little bit less work for Saquon when Daniel Jones is under center compared to Eli. Ultimately, again, I'm just not worried about it because he's still getting a top 8 to top 5 target share regardless. Would it be nice if it was, that top 4, top 2 pretty much we saw in 2018? Yes, but again, I think the overall talent outweighs the potential small decrease in volume. The real interesting thing is trying to break through with these wide receivers because right now Slayton's being drafted as the highest one, and then Shepard, and then Tate. And if you just look at last year, I mean, it should probably almost be in reverse because as talented as Slayton is, he made some nice plays downfield, showed off some solid route running. I mean, double moves, roasting Xavier Rhodes, for example. I know he wasn't the only one, but Golden Tate actually averaged more deep ball targets per game, and he kept his yak. I mean, this was really a great season by Golden Tate. I know he got suspended the first 4 games, but, he managed to keep that kind of yards after the catch ability he had in Detroit when most of his targets were coming on low ADOT stuff. But New York actually increased his ADOT, to a level we hadn't seen since his days in Seattle, and he was still making big plays after the catch. So really nice season from Golden Tate. Even had that, baller one-handed touchdown against the Cowboys as well. I'm okay ranking Shepard ahead of Tate, but it's close. And I think, either of those guys you should be prioritizing ahead of Slayton, I think, just relative to their costs. Like, why take Darius Slayton as a top 35, 40 receiver when you can wait like another 2 rounds and then have Tate and or Shepard fall into your lap? So either way, all these Giants wide receivers are being priced as wide receiver 3s, wide receiver 4s. It's a little unclear who's going to rise to the top, but, I'd be shocked if someone isn't a wide receiver 2 by the end of the season. I would say Sterling Shepard has the best chance of making that happen. But, this might be a situation where it's a better unit to attack in best ball than redraft. I mean, if all these guys stay healthy, it could be a week-to-week thing, just a different, kind of number 1 receiver throughout the week. But they are cheap. And, as we've, kind of talked about on these podcasts, it's so important just to try to get your running backs early in fantasy football drafts of all shapes and sizes. So, if you're entering rounds 7, 8, 9, with your running backs already locked in, I don't mind taking even more than one of these Giants wide receivers on the same squad. Because in best ball, you're not going to have to worry about, picking the week they're going to start. You just draft at the beginning of the year. It'll optimize, put the best guys out there. No better place to do so on Underdog Fantasy Sports. Go to Underdog, use code PFF. You'll get a free entry in their $1 million tournament. So you can, go see for yourself. And I've told people, as friends, when they ask, hey, what should I do in my fantasy drafts this year? And the one thing I say every single time is just go do a best ball draft or even just a mock draft, just 1 or 2 before you do your draft with your home friends, because you're going to be startled when you look at the RB landscape around 4 or 5. And, I know it's tempting when you see Devontae Adams and Julio Jones and just these complete studs there early, but, there's 50, 60 wide receivers literally we can talk ourselves into throughout these drafts, only about 15 running backs. So, again, go to Underdog. Do a couple of these best balls. I think you'll see what I'm talking about. And I think it'll put you in a better position to go win those home leagues as well. And hey, again, use code PFF. Maybe you'll even have $1 million, and then who cares about the home league? So we'll see what happens there. But all right, moving on to tight end. Another guy that, is you're just taking a risk on, but the upside's there. Unlike the wide receivers, though, Evan Engram is being priced closer to his ceiling. He deserves to be, though. I mean, when Evan Engram is on the field, he is a top 5 tight end. He really has been his whole career. The problem, I mean, he had 15 games as a rookie, then 11 games, then 8 games, so we're trending downwards. And you just look at the injuries since he's entered the league. 2 concussions, bruised rib, multiple sprained knees, 2 hamstring injuries, and an IR-worthy foot injury that took him out of the 2019 season. He has been back in training camp, moving well. Seemingly no risk of starting the year on the PUP list. That's all good news. And again, when Ingram is out there, he is going to be a tight end 1, and getting those 7.7 targets per game last season, obviously good to see with that. I mean, only Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Gronk, Ertz, and Darren Waller have averaged more receiving yards per game than Ingram among all tight ends over the past 3 seasons. I mean, that's 7.7 targets per game. We can rock with that. That's tight end 1 level stuff. So we'll see on Ingram. If he stays healthy, he's going to be out there. I understand not reaching for him in fantasy drafts. I haven't been. And, my general strategy at tight end position has been get Kelce, Kittle, or Andrews. If I can't, I'm waiting, let everyone else draft the next 6 or 7 tight ends out there. I will settle for the Chris Herndons, Jonnu Smiths of the world in the later rounds. So Evan Engram, ceiling's up there as always. It is a little concerning that the ADP is still right there in that ceiling. If Ingram, was the tight end 8, tight end 9, maybe I'd be more willing to take a stab at him. But injuries are a concern, and unfortunately, we're not getting much of a discount for those. On to the ranks. I have Daniel Jones as my QB 14. 1 spot behind Matt Ryan, 1 spot ahead of Aaron Rodgers. I have him behind, the aging gunslinger tier of Breeze, Stafford, Brady, Ryan. I do have Burrow and Newton ahead of him as well. He's got the rushing floor. That's why, I have Jones ahead of Rodgers and Goff. But just the Garrett thing. So much of his production last year did come in just these kind of bad team shootouts. I'm a little concerned with Jones's ability to keep up these wild 30-point games. The offensive talent is there, but the scheme, and I think maybe more importantly, the line play might not be at the level we need to see him really step it up. 2 QB leagues, that's fine, but I would not enter 1 QB leagues with Daniel Jones as your clear-cut number 1 QB option. RB, Saquon Barkley, RB2, only behind Christian McCaffrey, ahead of Ezekiel Elliott. Look, I mean, there hasn't been a repeat fantasy RB1 since Priest Holmes in the early 2000s, and McCaffrey lost to Saquon in 2018 by like 0.1 or something. So he was right there, very close to doing it. But, history would tell us that McCaffrey won't be the overall RB1 next year. Saquon has as good of a shot as anyone in the league of retaking that role. Wide receiver, again, like these guys, they deserve to be priced as wide receiver 3s and 4s. We're making projections here. Rankings are meant to denote where the guys are going to finish by the end of the year. And this is kind of one of the arguments that why rankings shouldn't necessarily be relied on as, the overall just king of kind of fantasy sports and what we're, grading analysts on and stuff. Because, okay, you have to rank these Giants guys. I have Darius Slayton, wide receiver 38, 1 spot behind Crowder, 1 spot ahead of Cooks. Shepard, wide receiver 46, 1 spot behind Mike Williams, 1 spot ahead of Deshaun Jackson. And then Golden Tate, wide receiver 43, 1 spot behind Deebo Samuel, 1 spot ahead of Preston Williams. I am targeting all those guys in that range. So I think it's just important to remember not so much like the specific ranking, like where's this guy's median projection going to be at the end of the year. It's about, is he being drafted in a spot where in his potential range of outcomes, the upside is much higher and it's realistic. And I think for all 3 of these wide receivers, we can say that. And again, Slayton, when we have to go that high, okay, I'm taking Brandon Cooks, I'm taking Mecole Hardman, I'm taking, probably the guys that just have a little bit more upside, when it comes down to it, but especially Tate and Shepard at their respective prices. Go get them, everyone. Go do it. It's not going to kill your team. You're not going to look back and say, wow, if I hadn't taken Sterling Shepard in round 10 of that fantasy draft, we'd be talking about a different squad. And I really think they could boom if everything goes their way. Tight end, I have Evan Engram as my tight end 5, 1 spot behind Zach Ertz, 1 spot ahead of Tyler Higbee. As I was explaining before, just usually kind of fading that tight end 4 through 10 range, letting others reach. So on to the win total. I said before, I do think the Eagles should be the favorite to win this division. Both them and the Cowboys have a 9.5 win total. Giants are down at 6.5, and we even got some juice on the under. I think 6.5 is a good number. This is a team that could flirt with 500 football, but ultimately I'm going to take the under here. I don't think they did anything on the defense to really convince you that they're going to be this world-beating unit. I mean, all respect to James Bradbury. He's a very good number 1 corner, but it was one of the things where like he would lose kind of a lot of these battles in an extremely tough NFC South. I mean, going up against Julio, Michael Thomas, Mike Evans 3 times a year, like that's miserable for a number 1 corner to deal with. But you know what? Things aren't going to be that much easier in the NFC East when he's going to have Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, and maybe Jalen Reagor sooner rather than later to square off against. So you look at the pass rush was an issue. There's just not enough new talent on this defense to make me think they can be anything better than below average. And on offense, it's like, do we really think Jason Garrett can enable Jones to take this step to carry a team that as a talent level, is in a different tier behind the Eagles and Cowboys? I'm going to go with no, under 6.5 wins for the New York Giants in 2020. All right, and that's going to do it, everyone. Thank you for listening. This has been your 2020 New York Giants Fantasy Football Team Preview, PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Ian Hartitz. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.